Welcome, everyone. My name is Dwayne G. James, and myself, along with Claire Rippel, are going to talk about our Neighborhood Leadership Fellows Program. All right. Okay. Just some essential questions that we want you to consider and think about as we go through this presentation is how to respond to the request to focus on leadership and equity in your community, in your region. How does leadership training align with capacity building and empowerment? And then what does collaboration look like from an extension standpoint, along with campus, CARES and UMSO, and then regional partners, and then the community perspective as well. So just some questions for us to consider as we go through this presentation. As I introduce myself, I am Dwayne T. James. I've been with Extension for 4 years now. But my other side, before I started with Extension, I was in politics, I was in engineering. I actually helped start this Ferguson Youth Initiative. So I was trained to be a better community resident through the eyes of youth. And believe me, if you ever want honesty, youth are the honest people to basically tell you what you are doing right, and especially what you're not doing the best that you can. So that's me.
And I'm Claire Rippel. Thanks for joining us this morning. You all know me as the CES-CED from St. Louis City. I've been with Extension for about 3.5 years, but before that I did a lot of community engagement work in neighborhoods that were sort of hard to engage. So I took a do whatever it takes attitude, which often included things like dressing up as a carrot. So that's me there at a farmer's market in a carrot costume.
Beautiful carrot, Claire. Beautiful carrot, Claire. That's hard to say. There we go. We did want to bring in the Connect strategy and remind ourselves of this effort and how our work at NLF aligns with the Connect strategy. So from a state perspective, we heard about the issue statements from leadership and then also equity. And then from an Urban East perspective, we also heard from leadership and equity. And so, Clara, did you want to expound a little bit?
Yeah, so just thinking about the programs that we offer are really directly connected to what we've heard around the state, and doing that Connect strategy work last year really solidified that what we're doing is exactly in line with sort of statewide what we've identified as top needs, the leadership issues and the equity issues, and then the same issues sort of bubbled up in the urban East region. So a little bit of background we thought might be helpful for understanding the context of St. Louis. And some of you may be familiar, some of you not, but the history of St. Louis is that it has this sort of long, deep, fraught relationship around race. And so over the past couple hundred years, there have been a number of public policies that enforce segregation, such as racial zoning, restrictive covenants, and redlining. And this has really set St. Louis up to be an inequitable and racially segregated region. And the impact has had an extremely detrimental effect. And so we'll show a few maps in a minute about what this looks like. But it shows up as massive segregation and really huge disparities regionally and geographically. And so you might have a similar story for your region, particular geographies that have high levels of disparities and different people who become the decision makers and set policies that sometimes perpetuate some of the challenges in the community. So that's sort of the historical context. But then more recently, as I'm sure you all remember, the 2014 death of Michael Brown sort of launched our region into a new stage. It was, of course, a huge tragedy, but the upside is that our region began to talk more about policing race, community, and equity, and so we've sort of seen a huge change. And I think Dwayne, you probably would agree with this, that a lot of our participants in our programs, that was sort of an awakening moment for them to actually get involved in their community and do more to see the change they want to see in their neighborhoods and in their municipalities. And then the other side of that is that in 2015, kind of on the heels of the death of Michael Brown, a WashU professor named Jason Purnell published a report called For the Sake of All. And it put data to a lot of these disparities that we all sort of felt and knew. And there was, you know, a lot of emotion around the disparities and what had happened in terms of the death of Michael Brown. And he sort of put together this really eye-opening report around what that disparity looks like.
So that's a little bit about the disparities and context for how we started and why we started NLF in St. Louis, but we want to give you the opportunity just to think about what population in your community is not represented at the decision-making tables. You can share this in chat. You can write it on your own piece of paper, but we just want to provide that opportunity for you to look at your own community, your own area, your own region, and see exactly what either part of town is not represented or what group is not represented at those decision-making tables. So if you want to share, you can share it in chat. Or if you want to basically share it vocally, just let us know, raise your hand, and then we can do it that way as well.
I think I'm never bashful. So I think in our small rural county, especially our poor people, lower income people are very underrepresented. The city council has a mayor who's always had money, and he is very negative towards any of those folks. My wife's on the city council, and we just had a big disagreement because he wanted to cut off people that couldn't pay their utilities during COVID-19, and my wife really went to bat and made sure that didn't happen. But that's an area that we really struggle with that I think we need to do a better job of.
Thanks, Joseph.
It's a great point.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share? Claire, I can't see the chat feature, so I'm not sure if you can see the chat feature.
Let me pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a few in chat.
A couple. African American community in Colombia. Bill says it's a relatively segregated community. And Maria says Hispanics in Carthage is over 35% of the population in town, and African Americans in Joplin, a small percentage of the population, but important relevant history in town. And then Chris says the south side of Hannibal, largely lower working class, somewhat racially diverse set of neighborhoods that are underrepresented. Awesome.
Yeah. And so these disparities aren't in one sector or one community, and we see it. And it's, you know, NLF provide that opportunity, or is providing that opportunity for those sectors of communities that don't feel like they're represented or don't have that voice. How do we give them the access and that network? And so with that, we will move into addressing a little bit more of the disparities in St. Louis.
So about 2 or 3 years ago in 2017, I had a grad student from UMSL who was working with us, and we have another program called Neighborhood Leadership Academy. And so we were working on Neighborhood Leadership Academy and sort of what else we needed to be considering. And so we started to really dig into what disparities look like for our community. And we looked at the public boards and commissions. So in St. Louis City, there's 16 major public boards and commissions in the city. And then over those 16 boards and commissions, there's 105 members. And so this student helped us look at the home addresses of all of the commissioners. And we found that 97 of the commissioners lived south of Del Mar and only 8 lived north of Del Mar. And this was where we saw there's a huge geographic disparity in decision making and in power. So these are people who are really important in terms of the direction of the city. And the residents north of Del Mar, their voices just weren't being heard. But then the communities north of Delmar are the communities that have the most challenges on a number of levels, and in terms of poverty and life outcomes. And so we thought, what is that? What does that mean when you have people in communities that aren't represented in these positions of power? And so we'll go over a little bit of what we mean by this, this north of Delmar. So you can see in the slide here that there's a kind of a clear break where there's some green above, and then there's also a dotted line. And so this is a picture of both the St. Louis and county. And so the dotted line to the right kind of shows the smaller St. Louis city area, and that's about 300,000 people. And then the larger area kind of surrounding that is St. Louis County, and that's about 1 million people. And then you can see the Mississippi River along the side, the kind of eastern side of the image. And so you can see this shows just there's such stark divide in St. Louis, and it's a city problem and it's a county problem. So Dwayne and I work really closely together on this because this is something that doesn't stop at the city boundaries or the city lines, but there's a lot of different governments and municipalities that play a part in this. A couple more images here about the disparities and what they look like, and we could go on and on with these. So we're just going to do a couple slides here, but this is a little bit small, but the map on the left is about St. Louis area schools that have the highest and lowest proficiency ratings. You can see that sort of really dark red triangle. That's North St. Louis, and then the kind of right above it, that's North County, where it's also really dark red. And then it's sort of lighter as you go more west and south. And so again, you can almost see Delmar Boulevard on that map. Just there's a really clear cut line where there's some disparities. And then on the map on the right, this is in which areas in St. Louis are people exposed to the most and least environmental toxins. So again, if you look at that sort of triangular piece and then right above it with the really dark red, that's St.Louis, that's North City, North County again. And this one I like a lot because this map is really clear in showing that this is something this is about policies, this is about regulations, these are environmental toxins, this is about, land use and conditional use permits and things that are sort of out of the hands of your regular everyday residents in terms of what kind of factories or businesses could be producing these toxins. And so it's something that we need to consider from a policy level. So the promise zone. You can see as we go toggle back and forth between these maps, this sort of geographic shape should start to look familiar. This is North St. Louis and part of North St. Louis County. In 2015, the Obama administration designated the kind of North St. Louis City and County area as a promise zone. And this this federal designation means that we get increased points on federal grant applications because it's an area that needs more investment. And so St. Louis has sort of built this entire body of work around the promise zone. And there's a number of goals listed there around economic activity, crime, education outcomes, health and wellness, workforce readiness. And so we started to partner with the promise zone because as Extension, we were seeing that this is an area that we also need to spend some more time in. As I mentioned, these our regions are really large, and so we can make an impact thinking about some areas that could really need our services and supports. And so when we thought about some of these challenges first, as Dwayne and I thought about designing out this program, we knew that residents in these neighborhoods had a lot of strengths. The lived experience and understanding was really valuable. Their community relationships were really valuable, but there are a lot of sort of systemic level challenges facing these neighborhoods and these community residents. And that would include the policies, the racism, the history of segregation. But we thought, what could we add to sort of shift this? So what if we took that balance and added mentorship and policy and procedure experience? Would that tip the scales and be able to provide more residents with the ability to be decision makers? And maybe in the process, we'd shake loose a couple of those other challenges as well.
And so that's when we started the Neighborhood Leadership Fellows Program as an advanced leadership training program to help shift that balance and do the work in the community. And so Claire, based off of the previous experience and based off the Neighborhood Leadership Academy that she had, was able to do focus groups to see exactly where those needs were. And we brought partners together to see exactly how we can bring all of our expertise into one room and make sure that we were providing a leadership training program that was unique and then also fill a gap that was in the St. Louis area. So working with Extension and UMSO and then bringing in the St. Louis Primary Zone and the Economic Development Partnership after a year of planning, a year of research, a year of seeing exactly how this was going to work. That's when NLF was birthed. 3 years ago now. Yeah. So the process was looking at what partners we wanted to work with and seeing how we could collaborate instead of doing something that was mimicking another program, looking at what funding there was that was available, and then doing the research to ensure that we were adding to the conversations and the collaborations that were already working and building upon instead of duplicating. And looking at the investment in human capital. So often we talk about the investment in social capital, the investment in economic development, but we were looking at the investment in human capital.
And so the first year, we had enough funding for to support 23 fellows. And so we put the word out, new program, not sure the response we would get. And the first year we got over 100 applications. And so to us, this said, wow, there's a demand for this kind of thing. There are people who are really interested and eager to contribute to their community and to be in a position where they can be more of the decision makers and have that voice in their community. And so this is an important thing to continue to work on.
So as Claire said, we did the marketing, did the applications, brought in 100 applicants to go through the process. We interviewed 45 that first year, coming up with a rubric to ensure that we were equitable in our decision making, making sure that it was a collaborative effort, and we looked at all types of geographies and backgrounds and experiences. Looking at this was an advanced leadership program, so we wanted them to have some core leadership qualities coming in the door. So we developed that rubric to make sure that we had that scoring mechanism. We also wanted to bring in the incentives and making sure that that was something that was a focal point. So instead of asking leaders to basically pay to be a part of this program, we wanted to provide stipends and opportunities for people that might not have had the monetary resources to be a part of this program, but then also asking if they have to leave work or if they have to go and do some traveling for interviews or conversations or networking, that they basically had some monetary support and some monetary stipends to do that work. And then mentoring as well was an essential component to ensure that they had the network, building their network to work on their leadership programs or their projects. And then the outcomes that we wanted to look at was projects that basically shifted the policy narrative and the policy work and shifted that systematic, the systematic issues that we saw in the community, and then their own personal leadership plans, ensuring that they were actually doing community work to build upon the great work that they were already doing or could be doing. And so as we looked at the schedule and looked at the topics, we knew that there was a lot of important issues that were going on in the region, in the state, in the nation. And we didn't want to spend one day and just talk about education, and then spend another day and just talk about health, and another day and just talk about politics, or another day and just talk about development. We knew that everything was interconnected. And so we wanted to build upon and bring in and show how education also helps with the health of a community, also helps with the development of a community, also helps with how do you shift some of that power balance. And so we made it a focus to make sure that we built upon and intertwined all of the topics and all of the speakers as we did this work. And so we worked out to basically develop a 9-month schedule of topics that focused on everything from segregation and racism in the communities, and how that basically impacted the well-being of a lot of neighborhoods, and how policies and politics basically were the demise of certain neighborhoods in the region, and how that basically has caused a snowballing effect for the region. And then looking at how do you deal with communication, deal with conflict, how do you tell your story from a data standpoint, how do you look at advocacy and campaigning and organizing communities, looking at what are those boards and commissions that are actually doing the work in the community, and how do you get on those boards and commissions, what does that actually mean? Understanding St. Louis development, how does it work? Not just what you see from the community standpoint, but some of those backroom conversations, some of those funding opportunities, looking at how does money actually flow through the region, looking at local and state government to understand exactly what levels things are actually decided upon, and how do you change the narrative of your story, not the data of your story, but change the narrative of your story to make sure that you're impacting the greater region. And then of course, looking at your leadership plan and some of those projects to basically change those policy efforts. So we meet once a month, Fridays from 1 until 6, Saturdays from 9 until 3. We have shifted that a little bit. We still meet once a month, but now we meet by Zoom. Those times are lessened a little bit, and we made up for some of that lost time together by offering a Wednesday once a month as well. But they're getting more than 100 hours of curriculum, more of 100 hours of instruction, a lot of neighborhood bonding and networking as well as we do this work. Funding, and so the funding stream was something that we looked at to ensure that we had the money to do this program right. And as Claire mentioned, we had money the first couple of years to do that work. And then the last couple of years, we were able to go after a grant from Missouri Foundation for Health to help provide the funding to put on neighborhood leadership fellows. And so some of the major items that we just wanted to mention and address was the external training for NLF fellows. And so 100 hours curriculum seems like a lot. However, we're only sometimes getting to the top piece, the 3,000 foot level of some of these conversations. So we wanted to provide opportunities for the individuals and the fellows to deep dive into some more training opportunities, either more training opportunities from the university perspective or other regional trainings. And so we wanted to provide some funds for that to happen. NLF alumni continuing development. So this is our 3rd year of the cohort, but we're still working with that first year of the cohort. Just because you went through the training doesn't mean that now you're an expert in all things politics and all things policy. And so we're continuing to bring the first year's cohort back into the conversation so they can share information to this year's cohort, but continuing to bring up relevant issues and relevant training as possible. So we provide some money so we can provide continued workshops, and then participant stipends. We talked about that as well. So we provide a stipend for each participant. We give a part of the stipend at the beginning of the class to help with any type of transportation issues, or also getting off of work, or childcare issues. And we provide that at the beginning, and then throughout the course of the program, they get the remaining at the end of the program. And so that helps individuals that might not be able to do other leadership programs actually be a part of NLF. And then this year, this is a funding for a new grant that we just went after with the Deaconess Foundation. And what we found was that there are individuals in the community that don't have access to computers. And so as we're doing this program, we saw that there's a need to basically have a couple of extra tablets on hand to loan them out to participants as we're doing the data exercise, as we're asking them to do research and having that opportunity for the fellows to basically borrow a tablet for that work session over the course of the couple of months to give them that opportunity to do that work. Claire, anything you want to mention on this?
I just wanted to add that if this type of program is something that you are considering offering in your community, the Missouri Foundation for Health, as I'm sure a lot of you know, has a really big footprint in the state as a whole, and have definitely mentioned to us that they would like to partner with Extension more and would like to partner in more of the rural counties across the state. So if you are interested in doing something like this, just know that this kind of leadership and policy branch is something that Missouri Foundation for Health considers health, and that they support this kind of work.
The other thing just to mention, you see this indirect cost, just when you're going after grants, just a reminder to factor the indirect cost into that process. And so we talked about speakers, we talked about a collaboration effort, and we don't do this alone. As great as Claire and I are, we know that we're great, we know that we're terrific. See, if we were in front of an audience, that would be a funny moment. So thanks Jody, I appreciate that. But what we do is we basically bring in regional experts, we bring in community experts, and we also bring in, of course, experts from the UM system to share their knowledge and then to share their expertise as well. And so when we do this work, we're ensuring that they get that knowledge from a lot of different sources and a lot of diverse voices to understand the work that they're doing, but then also how to collaborate with this work. So you see a lot of faces that are coming in from different political backgrounds, university backgrounds, regional partnerships, and then of course our extension personnel as well. And so it's been very beneficial for the speakers, or for the fellows, to basically hear from these regional partners, and they're happy to do it. They're happy to basically come in and help advance the knowledge of neighborhood leaders.
So this is my favorite thing to talk about, which is the outcomes of our program. And so one of the major things we're looking at is civic engagement, which is a broad kind of nebulous category, but a couple of things we wanted to mention in terms of things that our fellows have done since NLF. We've had a fellow start a youth civic leadership fellowship in the city and county, and Extension is working with them on that, Dwayne specifically. We had a fellow start a community development corporation in University City, which is a part of St. Louis County. And another fellow who was appointed the chair of Spanish Lake CDC, which is, Spanish Lake is another part of St. Louis County. We also talk with our fellows a lot about getting their voice out and being heard. And so we had a fellow who wrote an op-ed about police excessive use of force. And this fellow was a police officer. And that was published on CNN.com. So some really good national press for his voice there. And then we had a fellow who filmed a documentary about Kinloch, which is a small St. Louis community that used to be entirely African-American community, and it's really gone through a massive amount of disinvestment. And so she did a documentary about that, and just this week completed her successful $20,000 Kickstarter. So that's really exciting. So a lot of different things happening, and our fellows are really getting involved. But it's not always these big things. Not everybody is doing, huge documentaries and getting published on CNN.com. The picture to the right is a screenshot from Facebook. Our fellows have a little NLF Facebook group. And so one of our fellows posted this in there, and it says, I've never been this excited to vote next week. Honestly, if it were not for NLF, I wouldn't be voting. And that's her little Bitmoji there. And so I love this because we didn't pay her to do this, but it was just so nice to see that even in small ways that NLF is encouraging people to be more civically engaged and being genuinely excited and motivated to be involved in their communities. So.
And a lot of this is because if you see a lot of populations that aren't at those decision-making tables, they get disinterested in the voting process, and they get disinterested in those tables or those councils or those boards that basically aren't invested in their community. So with that, we were able to basically, NLF has helped a few individuals actually gain seats at the decision-making tables. And so 2 NLF fellows have filed to run for state representative. One actually won, Kevin Wyndham with the 85th district. He won last year. Then we've had 6 fellows that actually ran and 5 won city council positions in St. Louis municipalities. And then we have 2 that are currently running for city council positions. And so what we've seen is that they want to do it. They just need the empowerment and the courage or the support to do some of this work. And so that has provided them that opportunity and provided that space for them to explore and see what they can do and how to do it. And so that's been great. Of course, we do evaluations to ensure that what we are planning on doing and hoping to do is actually making an impact in the community or in the fellowship program. And so we do evaluations on a monthly basis to see exactly how we can change and monitor the program from a month-to-month basis or from a year-to-year basis. And then we solicit feedback to see exactly how we can better improve their NLF experience. And so we just had a session last week and move into Zoom. We asked them how everything was going, and we got some honest feedback about how we can make the program a little bit better for them. So we're revising the program on a month-to-month basis just to ensure that their experience is as great as it can be. And when you're working with human capital, as much of a framework or a curriculum you actually might have, you have to revise that based off of the experiences of the people in the room. So we're doing that on a monthly basis as well.
And I'll just add that a lot of we do both qualitative and quantitative evaluation. And so on the qualitative side, we have a graduate student who is interviewing all of our past fellows at this point, kind of trying to understand where are they now, 1 year out, 2 years out. So even beyond the program, we're doing this. And I just want to emphasize too that we partner a lot with the local universities to have the capacity to do that, because it takes a lot of effort and time to do the evaluation. So we've been lucky to have some really good grad students who've helped us with that.
All right, and so you've heard from us, but we want you to hear from the fellows themselves. And so let me cue this up.
Dwayne, I can't really hear it. Can others hear it?
No, I can't.
No.
Nope, can't hear it.
Can you play, is there a way to play it through the sound?
Or add the captions. That might help if you just hit the CC button.
Six.
That might help.
When you share your screen originally, there's an option to share sound from my computer down at the bottom.
Can you hear now?
Not really.
Nope.
No.
All right, so that is good. So share computer sound. There we go. There we go. All right, let's hit.
Places, but I have chosen, lovingly chosen to remain in North St. Louis City. That will probably never change for me because I feel that the people there are soulful and valuable and kind and forgotten.
O'Fallon Place is a city in its own. The zip code is 63106, and it is one of the most underprivileged, underserved area in the city of St. Louis.
I was looking for work, and I applied to the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County to be a police officer. I had no idea the dramatic effect that being an officer would have on my life. The unit that I was in we worked for like 7 different low-income areas. So I got to learn that it also affects their behavior, it also affects the health, it also affects how people think, and I'm seeing all these things and I'm reading books and I'm learning about poverty traps and everything else. And I'm like, something has to happen because we are losing gold here.
I would say that Neighborhood Leadership Fellows has brought great things that usually are apart from people here in our region from a civic standpoint, which is the people and the resources and the education. So those 3 usually don't meet. And NLF provides you with all 3 of those.
I think it's easy to stay focused on your own small area and what's going on there. And this is part of what has helped with being involved in the NLF fellowship is connecting with people from this broader region of the Promise Zone and recognizing, number one, how some of the issues we share are shared in common, and number 2, that starting to see potential for collaborative solutions. By connecting with regional partners, we have more potential.
This has opened up doors and avenues for me that I kind of like put back on the back burner. But now, since I have a good support system here and we have great facilitators, and the subjects that we touch on are very it hits on personal development, this has been an awesome experience.
The people that we have in the Neighborhood Fellows are so top-notch that we could probably go throughout the entire session just hearing from the people that are there. But the A-list people that are being brought to come in and speak with us and share their experiences, there is nothing like it. There's no other program in sight that I could find that was like this. So it's so important to me. It's like a charge to St. Louis that we have an obligation to do something in this city.
Mostly what I hope is that this idea of who we are or what we've been, the truth is told about it. That's what I'm interested in. Like, there are people that live here, they're thriving, they want more, they work every day. They're not trying to harm anyone else. They want what's entitled to them as human beings.
The things that we plan on coming out which is actionable steps that we all can go tackle beyond our 9-month course here, fellowship here, is what I see coming up out of all of this, because we need to change. Without change, we will keep doing the same thing, and I think that's the definition of insanity. We've been insane here in our region for decades and centuries. It's time to create an opportunity to thrive in a more equitable, bankable, and sustainable way.
Let's see if I can get back to my other day. There we go. All right. So we wanted to talk about what some of the obstacles were and what some of the things that we had to overcome or continuing to overcome, and basically bring that to light as well. And so individualized human capacity investment is hard, but it's achievable. So as you're working with 23 to 25 individuals, they have 23 and 25 individualized leadership initiatives, plans, hopes, dreams, but also their own point in their development. And so as we work with these humans, we're dealing with human issues and emotions and conversations as well. So we're still talking with people from the first cohort that are going through their leadership plan. And as you're invested in this work, it's work. It's something that you can't just do a hour-long workshop and be like, all right, I'm done. You know, they're calling, they're conversing, they are bringing up emotions that we're working through and helping to support and assist with. So it's great work, but that's another component that is not part of the funding or not part of just the normal day-to-day schedule. Finding speakers is also something that has been hard. Not so much of just bringing in a regional speaker and bringing in an expert to talk to the class. It's more of bringing in a speaker that is willing to have a discussion with the class, because these are individuals and these are fellows that have a lived experience and have a knowledge that want to share that as well. So there might be some challenging conversations. There might be some questions that are asking people to think a different way or to interpret things a different way. So speakers have been great, but then just finding those speakers that can talk about the broad depth of issues has sometimes been challenging as well, especially aligning with their schedules. Group projects, working through team dynamics, and having individuals understand their strengths and what are those strengths that they actually bring to the table. We go to the Clifton Finder strength assessment. And so how do we bring in those strengths to look at it from a team dynamic standpoint? Having leaders understand policy versus program, that you can't just have a one-off program that's going to change the systematic issues that have been around for 30 to 40 years. So how do we deep dive into some of those policy conversations and go through that work? And then sustainability as well, you know, funding is there, and seeing exactly how we can continue to find the funding to go through this program, and then ensuring that we're continuing the conversations and continuing the networks and continuing the work after graduation. So you heard Justin say in that program that, you know, graduation is after 9 months, but the work continues after those 9 months. And so how do we do some of that work after that? So all of this has been hard, but very achievable and very rewarding as well. Any questions? We went through a lot.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was wonderful. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or type in the chat. I'll try to read those. I had a question about your partners at the beginning. So like when you were kind of developing the program, you saw these issues. I really liked the idea of shifting the balance. So I was just wondering how you kind of chose those partners initially. What were some things you thought about?
Do you want me to answer this?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
So initially, this was an idea that we were just sort of talking to people, going around St. Louis, talking to people who were involved in the Promise Zone and seeing what they thought of it. And so it wasn't something that we were like, we're doing this, do you want to be on board? It was sort of like, here's what we're thinking, these are the needs we're seeing in our community, and this is something that we've been considering doing. And so I went to talk to Erica Henderson at the Promise Zone office, and she said, I had like a one-pager, and she said, this is great, how can we help, do you need money? I didn't ask for money, she was just like, can we give you money to do this? And not only that, she part of our curriculum team and came to every single meeting about developing the curriculum. And she spoke at our last meeting. I mean, this turned into a really long-term partnership that started with just kind of like a coffee meeting, like, what do you think about this concept? So So that was one of the partnerships. And then with UMSL, University of Missouri, St. Louis and University of Missouri Extension have a joint initiative called Creating Whole Communities. And so we've worked on a lot of projects together. And so that's sort of been like for a long time, for years and years, there's been a really close relationship between those two institutions. So it was an easy partnership to say, can we come together and do this? Can we share resources on this? Can we share, put our heads together, and can we pull from your faculty and that kind of thing? So.
Claire, Dwayne, on
Yes, ma'am.
the application that you did apply for a grant with the Missouri Foundation for Health, correct?
Yes.
And are you willing to share that if we are interested in doing something? Because I have been exploring some things with the Joplin Chamber of Commerce. They're also interested in this diversity inclusion. Joplin has a lot of issues, but we will need more partners, and I thought that might be a good venue to look into.
Yes,
yeah,
we can share that.
And how much guidance, or I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say in terms of a lot of time investment, but how much guidance can we get from you all? Because I mean, just having the St. Louis region being something that worked in Missouri, it's a strong thing that we can use here to say this is something we could probably, maybe not exactly copy, but adapt to our area.
Please copy, Maria. Feel free to whatever you want, steal, borrow, whatever you need. And we're happy to help as much as possible. I think, I don't want to speak for Dwayne, but I think both of us would see this as something that we think it has impact, and we would want to see it scaled across the state if possible. And so it's part of our mission too, to see that happen. So
yeah, and I say copy because each place has its own local context, but definitely, I mean, can we borrow this and adapt it to to our needs here, basically, and then use you in a way as a guide.
Yeah, you're
yes,
exactly
most definitely.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It will need to be adapted to your area. This is a program that is definitely kind of steeped in the local context, but whatever of it is useful for you. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your recruitment process for participants? I mean, do you have trouble filling the program? Do you have more applications than you have space? And what filtering or assessment tool do you use for determining who makes it in and who doesn't?
So we don't have trouble with applicants. Last 3 years, we've had over 100 applicants, and we do that with recruitment of asking individual fellows from previous years to help us recruit. We ask local officials to basically help us do that as well. We put ads through social media and then also local papers just to make sure that we're trying to connect with all different avenues and resources. So we do that to basically bring in the application process. And then as we look at the application process, we also see if there's geographies that aren't being touched or demographics that aren't being touched to make sure that we do additional marketing and exploration and to fill those gaps and fill those needs as well. We don't want it just to be a St. Louis City program or a St. Louis County program. We don't want it just to be from one municipality or one ward. So we try to divide that up as much as possible. And then the same thing with the interview process. Claire and myself sit in on the interviews, but we bring in past fellows and then partners and graduate students to ensure that there's different voices and different decision-making people at the table. And then if one of us has some type of tie or some type of past relationship with one of the participants or one of the applicants, we make sure that we sit out of that process just not to bring that variable into the conversation.
And I'll just add that the interview process is the best part. We can take 1 million applications, but the program is, because of the structure and because we are offering a stipend, it's helpful to actually talk to people and understand why they want to be a part of the program and what their interests are. And it's pretty clear in the interviews that who really has a commitment to their community and is there for their sort of the greater good and sees themselves as sort of a public servant. And so the interviews take forever. We interview 45 people and you know, it just is like a massive process, but for us, it's been super helpful and worth it to talk to everybody one-on-one, everybody who makes that kind of first cut to understand what their motivations are. And I think we have a pretty good process around that we'd be happy to share too.
Luckily, we've only had 2 people that have had to drop out of their program since we've started over the last 3 years. And those 2 people had work issues that had them pull away from the program.
So I had a question.
Yeah, Chris.
I was curious how the city leaders in all the municipalities you work in, how they've taken this program. Because on one hand, I could see, you know, a lot of backing for this because it kind of allows people to be more engaged and to kind of give, you know, to constructively engage with the community needs issues. But also I could see where maybe some might see this as a way to breed, you know, competition for their spots or you know, just general, you know, challenge in general. I was just curious how that was received by kind of those individuals in the community, and if that's like a help to get the program started or a hindrance.
There, you want to go?
I mean, to be honest, here's what I would say is that I think this is a University of Missouri program. I mean, I think there's a lot of respect in the region for the university, and they're seen as a trusted, neutral partner. And I think everybody wants civic engagement and wants to see more voters, you know, coming out to the polls and wanting to see more people involved. And I think thus far, it has been a really positive relationship with local elected officials. We've had a lot of local elected officials come to graduation, which has been really fun to, you know, people's representatives who in their communities have come and spoken and that kind of thing. So thus far, to be honest, we've had a really positive response from local elected officials.
I would just say, I would piggyback on that and just say that there's a lot of open positions on boards and commissions. And so the conversation has always been they can't find individuals to fill those boards and commissions. And so we market it as this is an opportunity to find individuals that are passionate for their community and have that knowledge to basically sit on that board and commission, and that has helped. Of course, there are people that are in our program that are vying for positions, or automatic positions, or representative positions against someone else that is already in that seat. That has not been something that has hindered us so far, just because most of the municipalities and most of the elected officials see this as a way to basically gain community engagement and help their communities.
Thanks, guys.
No problem.
The Promise Zone, is that something that was created by the Obama administration? Does it still hold this work?
Yeah, it was a 10-year designation. And so that has continued into this year. I guess it has a couple more years, but I don't know if it'll be renewed or not. I think the current administration has started opportunity zones, which are a little bit different, have a little bit different structure, but there might be some ways to align with that framework as well. So.
Just a few more minutes if there's any other final questions.
So I would just also offer that if you want to sit in on one of our workshops, let us know. We're doing things by Zoom now, so we can always add you to the conversation, add you to the link. If there's ever an opportunity where you want to speak to the Neighborhood Leadership Fellows and present some information, just let us know. We can see how that can align with our current schedule. And I think it's good for individuals to hear voices from all different parts of Missouri. So I think that's great. It's a lot of the projects they're working on are issues that are going to be taken up should be taken up at the state level. And so it will be good to hear that balance of not just a St. Louis County voice or St. Louis City voice, but also the voices of other community engagement specialists, other specialists that are doing work throughout the state of Missouri. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, at the beginning of our presentation, we talked about the Connect strategy and how this was addressing leadership and equity, but then all of our fellows have to work on projects. And those projects are addressing issues like workforce development and health and all these other issues that also across the state we've seen and locally in St. Louis City and County and St. Charles and Jefferson County as priorities. So, so it's a way that we can also have ripple effects that if we directly aren't working on a workforce development issue, that we have been able to empower other community members and sort of amplify our impact as extension by being able to empower others to be able to do that work as well.
You said when you look at your applicants that if you're missing a certain demographic or geographic, you try to target that. How do you do that? You said initially you use past fellows, but then if you're missing that component, where do you go?
And so it's just broadening our network to see exactly who we might have a tie-in to that municipality to see how we can do better outreach in the next year, or basically, because NLA, Neighborhood Leadership Academy, has 300 plus alumni that are out there. So we're tied into a lot of different municipalities, our geography as well. So we tie into that, or use our extension council as well as a way to basically broaden that message and that perspective. And so if we don't have it from a certain cohort or basically the ties from the NLF alumni, we just do a better job of going out and trying to connect. And so case in point, we didn't have a lot of representatives from Spanish Lake, which is very, very north St. Louis County. And so this past year, Claire and I worked with the St. Louis Zoo to do some outreach and educational programs in Spanish Lake area. And so while we were there, we also mentioned Neighborhood Leadership Fellows as an avenue for some of the residents that are in that community to gain this knowledge. And this year we have 2 that are basically a part of the program. And so we used our other ties to offer this opportunity as well.
Okay, great, thanks.
There was a comment in the chat from Pat Barrett. She asked to be invited to the Zoom session. So I'll send a follow-up email after this with the recording and everything. So would the event page on the website be the best place to sign up, or?
Just shoot an email to Claire and I.
Okay, great. All right. Well, it's 10 a.m. Thank you so much, Claire and Dwayne. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
for
everyone.
joining, everyone.